What's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with metaltrenches.com. As always, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel and hop down to the description to follow us on social media, get on the email list, and also support us on Patreon and Subscribestar. But it is tier list time, and I'm super excited to do this one. This is kind of a follow-up to the Bands That Changed My Life video I did on Between the Buried and Me. It really got me wanting to kind of continue on to talk about each of their albums, as I only really sort of talked about the initial spark, as I put it, that happened with the Silent Circus and a little bit on Alaska too. But there's so much to get into here, and I really just want to kind of jump right in and talk about all these albums. And we're going to kind of just go through them in order, and I'm going to give you my particular thoughts on the rankings here. So starting with the self-titled album, I have a ton to say about this one. It's the only D-list album, spoiler alert, that I'm going to put so far down. I think there's a lot of interesting things, like even just as a debut, just standing out from the pack. But in terms of production and the songwriting, it's a bit clunky. It's not super enjoyable, at least in my opinion, to sort of re-listen to. There are some moments I really enjoy. Like, I really like that weird kind of like thrash metal, heavy metal moment that they have. That's the one that stands out to me the most, with the high-pitched vocals that seem to come out of nowhere. It always gives me sort of a giggle. And I think just sort of set the tone for how they had a sense of humor about themselves from the very beginning. But yeah, self-titled, it's my least favorite album, and we'll kind of just leave it at that. So then getting into the Silent Circus in 2003. This is among my favorites, and again, if you watch that Bands That Changed My Life video, I really kind of talk quite a bit about my first experiences discovering this album. So I have a bit of a bias, because I think we all have certain albums from bands that when it's like the first album that got us into them, we hold it in sort of a higher esteem. But there's just so much to enjoy on this album. You got Camilla Rhodes, Shivanal. Yeah, I have trouble pronouncing some names. Yeah, lots of great tracks, lots of really interesting songwriting. It really just blew me away, because I had never heard anything quite like this before. It was one of the introductory albums into what I would learn to be called as mathcore later on, and even predated me being exposed to the Dillinger Escape Plan. So I think it's just really interesting. It stands out in their discography too, because it's just a little bit different. It's also one of their heaviest albums for sure. There's some pure like death metal moments all over that album, with just brutal, deep vocals, then alternating with the squelchy highs, and then you've got these just out of nowhere like clean sections, and the more sort of atmospheric, ethereal portions. There are parts I even described as like kind of acoustic, like dashboard confessional almost areas. So I was just totally bewildered listening to this thing. And to this day, it stands as one of my favorite albums from them. But if I'm being fair, I can't really put it at S tier, because it does have some problems. It's not quite as smooth in terms of songwriting and flow from song to song as some of the later stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and put it at A. I think it's definitely a must-listen album, but there are albums that they have that are better than that. And speaking of which, let's go to 2005 with Alaska. This is my first S-tier album for them, for sure. All Bodies is an amazing opener. It's among my favorite songs that they've ever done, and this is definitely one of their finest albums, which is kind of interesting, because initially I was not as big a fan of this album as I was with the Silent Circus. I think it just, again, didn't have quite that initial kick of like, what the fuck, because I'd sort of adapted to the sound then, and so this was a little bit different. But over time, I think I came to understand that the songwriting's much better, much stronger. There's a better flow, not only within the songs, but from song to song. They really stepped up kind of all songwriting areas. There's better implementation of the singing portions. It doesn't feel like it kind of jumps around so much. Again, better flow. It just feels more cohesive. The guitars are absolutely epic on this thing, so they stepped up just like those melodic neoclassical tinged, just I don't even know how to describe it, jazzy, like they have a very particular sound to their lead guitars. And I think particularly on this album there are just so many melodic portions from them that really stand out and just sort of linger and stick in your head. Songs like Alaska, Selkies, where they just went full prog on that one, Autodidact. And I'd also consider this album to be sort of their last kind of death metal-y album. I mean, they definitely still incorporated those heavier vocals on later albums, but for some reason this one stands out as like one of the last to like really stick to that sort of raw, pure death metal sound on tracks, especially like Robo Turner, which goes like straight grindcore for its duration. Another standout track from this album. Amazing stuff. It was really great to kind of go back through and listen to all these albums again, and it'd been a little while since I'd listened to Alaska, so that was quite a treat. But let's move on to 2007 with Colors, and this is another one of my S tier albums. Another great intro. BT Bam's kind of known for just like really powerful opening tracks, and this is no different, but it is also one that kind of signals a shift into their more proggy sound, because you got the piano, you've got the clean singing. In case you're not aware, this is really just one long song just sort of broken up into parts. They focus on lengthier compositions this time around too. Informal Gluttony also just really pushing new territory with massive Middle Eastern atmosphere in the opener for that one. You've got like hand drums, tambourine. There's even like monkey noises later on. But then also still plenty of heavy and raw parts. But it feels like this is a turning point where the ratio of kind of like metalcore and death metal to prog really starts to shift in favor of the latter. And you even get more like 70s style Hammond organ on tracks like Son of Nothing. And that track in particular kind of reminds me of Rush at points. And that's going to be an ongoing theme kind of from here on out, with implementing those more old school prog rock bands into their overall sound. But so many amazing tracks here. Ants of the Sky, White Walls is a truly epic conclusion. And then of course there's Prequel to the Sequel, which is another one of my favorite songs from them. Kind of has an unfair advantage because in college we spent a lot of time drinking and playing both Guitar Hero and Rock Band, and Prequel to the Sequel was included within Rock Band. And so I heard that one over and over again, having fun just playing that song with friends on that game. And it's just even that aside though, like amazing composition. It goes through so many different movements and styles, and starts to play with even more kind of experimental parts. You've got that weird kind of I don't even know how to describe it, the accordion part that slows down, and it's almost like music you'd hear a bunch of like guys with just like their sax on sticks sitting around a campfire like singing their little song. That's the best way I can put it. But I'm definitely not alone in considering Colors to be among their best albums. I think among the fans, this is a commonly called out album to be their best. And so I'll be interested in the comments to see how people feel about that ranking and all of the other rankings I'm about to give too. Let's jump forward another 2 years to 2009, and we've got The Great Misdirect. And this feels to me like kind of their first real misstep in their discography at this point. And it's by no means a bad album. Like a bad album from Between the Buried and Me is still better than most albums in general from other bands, I would say. But I would definitely put this as a C. I hadn't re-listened to this one in a long time because it's one of the ones I listened to the least, because I really didn't connect to it like most people. There's just something missing here. And that's not to say that there's not great moments, because there definitely are. But you've got 6 tracks, and it has their longest track ever, which is kind of notable to point out, at almost 18 minutes, Swim to the Moon, which is a damn good track. And it's among several tracks, or at least moments, that are really good. Obfuscation is a solid track, but it kind of feels like a less interesting retread of old ideas that they've already done at this point, which I think kind of sums up the album. It feels more meandering, it's less cohesive. It almost feels like a B-side compilation at points in its kind of clunky, mismatched vibe. It's very experimental, lots of almost kind of freeform jam sounding sessions with tracks like Disease, Injury, Madness, and also there's slide guitar on the largely acoustic Desert of a Song. And these things are cool, but they just all sort of run up against each other. There doesn't seem to be a good sense of order. Mirrors is also a comparatively weak opening. It drags on too long, doesn't really have the same concise kick to it. Feels more like a mid-album jam than a way to start off a BT Bam album. So, yeah, there are cool things though. Like I like the cool bass break and psychedelic soloing that come in. Fossil Genera is also kind of a glimpse forward to what they'd be doing on Coma Ecliptic with its playful piano and swinging style. Definitely more on that later. We've also got kind of like Patton-esque vocals on the opening to that one. Cool strings at the end. Sort of their first foray into the more eccentric side. And there are parts of this that have really grown on me within context of knowing what would happen later on with the discography. So lots of cool ideas, just not fully baked yet. All right, Parallax in 2011. We've got their first EP, 3 lengthy tracks here, and it's part of a sci-fi concept. It seems like the band kind of heard a lot of the complaints from the Great Misdirect, and I feel like they sort of went back to more concise songwriting on this one. It's another one that kicks off with a bang. It feels like it's got a more integrated approach than the previous album in terms of the prog and metal elements coming together in a stronger way at this point. I also feel like there's a pretty Opeth kind of vibe at times, some very Ackerfeld sounding riffs, and some seriously impressive drumming too. It just feels more concise, less meandering, with definitely its experimental moments and pushing their sound forwards too. You've got horns and organ making a return, and yeah, it's pretty damn engaging. Lots of surprises, but again, a better flow. I like it more now, and since I listened to it, this is another one that's been a little while since I had checked it out. But it predates stuff I quite enjoy now in a very similar style. It kind of reminds me in a way of like Alkaloid, and that's something that, again, I really like now, but I think I maybe wasn't quite ready for this back at the time. But ultimately, it's still not quite as impressive as like their first 3 albums, in my opinion. It's not as memorable, and so for that reason, I feel like a B feels pretty appropriate for this one. But that's a nice segue into Parallax 2 in 2012, and that is continuing that same concept, but moving into a full-length album. Another great opener here, very musical-like, furthering the transition that we're hearing to Coma Ecliptic. So much xylophone in this song and also throughout the album. There's also flutes later on, incorporating more and more kind of extra instrumentation. Lots of that 70s prog influence again, and also kind of that sound that we now associate with later Opeth. Astral Body absolutely rips, incredible guitars. It's like a non-stop solo. If you just listen to that thing, like the leads do not stop. Like they do not stop to play like chords. Like it is all just pure, just noodling and just shredding, and it's fantastic. Among their most diverse and accomplished compositions to date. Another one of my favorites. And then that rolls right into Lay Your Ghost to Rest. It's like a marathon. This whole album's really like a marathon. You've got Telos, you got Melting City, you've got the neoclassical perfection that is Silent Flight Parliament. What an amazing opening that has too. And just overall, I feel like this album goes back to the energy of albums like Alaska and also Colors. And so this, even though this is another one that I hadn't listened to a ton for whatever reason. Maybe I just, again, wasn't quite ready for that transition. But I almost want to put it at S tier. Like, I think this is slowly becoming one of my favorites. I'm going to put it at A for now because I still don't quite put it in the same esteem as Alaska or Colors. But it's on its way up there, and I quite enjoy it. So definitely A for that one. All right, then we got 2015's Coma Ecliptic, which I keep referencing, so high time we talk about it. This was obviously a very divisive album. I happen to love it, partially because I love Queen. I'm a big Queen fan, and to me, this is basically BT Bam's Night at the Opera. Like, I don't think I can put it a better way than that. The natural progression, too, I think is an important thing to say. And it's never been clearer than now, like spending the weekend listening to all these albums back to back in order. Like, I think a lot of people were like, what is this? This came out of left field. And really, it didn't. Like, this totally makes sense within the context of where the band was going from album to album. So, yeah, epic, totally catchy too. It's one of their more memorable albums. Like, all the songs really stand out. I still can't stop singing along to The Coma Machine. People act like this song also is like all clean singing. It's like their clean album. They're kind of treating it the same way that we're treating newer Opeth, but it's really not. Like, there are some heavy parts on here right from the beginning and some great heavy riffs. It's a BT Bam album through and through. Like, I don't get it. I'm not a huge fan of the newer Opeth albums, though I respect the heck out of like Ackerfeld for just making the decision that this is the music he wants to make right now instead of just doing what the fans maybe want or expect. But in any case, this doesn't feel the same as that. Like, this is definitely still metal, in addition to the newer stuff they're doing. I also like the electronic elements on like Dim Ignition. Kind of reminds me of Daft Punk's Tron soundtrack in a weird way. And even, yeah, just again, even clear, just listening now, this album just makes so much sense. Famine Wolf still has some great mathcore riffs on it too, with like just squealing guitars. And like, anyone who thinks that this is not like a metal BT Bam record is just crazy. You're not listening hard enough. But yeah, it's really stuck with me. I also really love the like circus announcer kind of style vocals. It adds to that eccentricity again that we started to hear on the Great Misdirect very briefly, but much more pronounced here. And so for all that, I think this is an A. Not quite an S, but darn close. Honestly, I would, if I'm kind of ranking these in order, it's probably sort of Colors, Alaska, and then, ooh, that's tough. Maybe something like that if we're going from left to right. It's tough. It's tough because all these albums are great in their own right. And then we're coming up to their present album with Automata. Came out in 2018. Still trending with the great openers here. I love the combo of Condemned to the Gallows and House Organ, both just really kicking things off strong. And also note, I'm stating this as a single album. I know it's technically two albums, but they're both part of the same larger concept. So it feels appropriate just to treat it as one thing. This album to me kind of feels like a cross between Coma Ecliptic and Colors. It's a bit heavier than Coma Ecliptic, which I like for various reasons. It's something that stood out to me when I first reviewed it. Also a bit more experimental, especially in the second half. Especially Voice of Trespass. That is a great song. Like, that is amazing. One of the weirdest things they've done. It almost feels like you've stepped back in time into like a 50s nightclub, and it's just like swing with that big brass and like scat vocals mixed up with the usual like BT Bam metal twist on everything. It's so bizarre, and I absolutely love it. It's definitely a standout of the entire two-part series here, and I'm really interested to see where they go in the future with stuff like that. I also really like the weird disjointed riff on Blot. So yeah, there's some really standout stuff on here. It's a pretty consistently solid album, but I would say it's like not as memorable for some reason. Like, I initially reviewed this, I think I might have even scored it higher than Coma Ecliptic, but as time has worn on, Coma Ecliptic has really stuck with me. Like, all those songs just really stand out. Whereas Automata, maybe it's just I haven't spent as much time with it, but I don't have that same effect. Like, I'd kind of forgotten what a lot of this album sounds like aside from kind of the more eccentric, weird stuff. So for that reason, I kind of feel like a B is appropriate. And yeah, great album, great band. They really haven't made like a truly awful album. I would recommend any one of these, but it definitely really anyone from these top three tiers. And you can see the bulk of their albums landed in there. I've only got two albums that I would rank below a B, and that's really just sort of within context of how great all of these albums are. If I'm ranking them again against like other bands with other albums, then I might even rank some of these even higher. Like I'd rank The Great Misdirect above a lot of other albums that I enjoy from other bands because of its interesting songwriting and trying new things and experimentation. And yeah, so just so much great things to say about Between the Buried and Me. They're a band that I'm glad that I stumbled into pretty young in my high school years and have had the joy of seeing sort of evolve throughout my lifetime as I've been maturing and changing and getting older too. It's just one of those things that has really stuck with me, and I'm always intrigued to hear what they do next. So again, let me know in the comments what you all think. I'm interested to hear what your favorite albums are. I'm going to put a link to this specific tier list so that you can even make your own and link it if you want to. And yeah, tell me what other bands you have these same feelings for, maybe other bands you'd be interested in me covering. There are other tier lists that I've done for other bands in this style, also just full genres. I did a metalcore one. I kind of wanted to do a mathcore one, but it's really hard because people will argue about which bands should and should not be included in that one, even more so than other genres. So still thinking about that in terms of how I would approach it. Maybe somebody could even kind of curate the list for me on TierMaker, and then I could just use theirs. But yeah, other videos too, bands that changed my life. I've talked about Between the Buried and Me. Prior to this, I did one on the Dillinger Escape Plan. And then there's also podcasts with other bands in the genre and beyond that too. So definitely stick around, subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed this, like the video, and yeah, follow us on social media, get on the email list, and consider supporting us on Patreon or Subscribestar. Just $1 a month makes a huge difference. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.